All right, folks, welcome back for another episode. I wanted to welcome my next guest. He is a published author and highly experienced individual in the fields of security and intelligence. He has an amazing resume, which includes high levels of training, extensive knowledge in close protection, physical penetration, and personal security. And to me, most importantly, he is a world-renowned body language expert. I'm very excited to speak with him about that. I wanted to welcome author Gavin Stone. Thank you for taking the time to speak with me. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. Just oh man, your resume is quite impressive. And before we go into the book that I wanted to target on, I wanted to talk about some of your past jobs. One in particular, physical penetration testing. I know that's like trying to get into some camp or homes or businesses of influential clients. Can you talk to me about that experience? That must have been quite
Yeah.
something.
Yeah, I'm happy to share with that, and it, like you say, can vary from anything from military camps to
Right.
office buildings to on one occasion it was a gentleman's personal home wanted to test his personal levels of security. The sad bit, unfortunately, what I tell people about this is they say, "Oh, it sounds really exciting." Because I remember when I started going into this, I
Yeah.
thought, "Oh, I know lock picking and I know covert method of entry and I know all these little bits," and I thought I'm going to get to use all that. And the disappointing part, this is where people are going to go, "Oh," is most of the time it's actually a case of just hanging around in the smoke shelter and somebody holding a door open for you.
I mean, in the end state, if you do it, you could get shot, right? So it's just fascinating to me. And I know it's a lot of surveillance and just kind of learning how that works. But I thought that was quite interesting. And I know you've done a lot of work with the Ministry of Defense, but just really cool. I just again your resume was quite impressive, and so I thought that was cool. I had to ask you about. And then also before we go into the book, can you just tell us about your YouTube page, Gathering Intelligence with Gavin Stone, the Zero to Hero
Yeah.
interviews? Can you share
I'd be
some insight
glad
on
to.
that?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, it's generally a lot of people that I've either worked with or have like kind of a relationship with from the intelligence community, and I get friends to come on and just talk about their experiences from the field and the world of spying. So there's everybody from MI6, KGB. I've got a friend of mine from Mossad coming on. There's somebody from the NSA coming on. So we get a good old mix of different people from the intelligence world just to kind of have a conversation and share a few things we probably shouldn't over a chat.
Yeah, no, certainly interesting. A lot of cool topics like I mentioned earlier, body language and just human behavior. And I know you occasionally have some off topics, but I thought that was really cool. But with that, hey, I reached out because I wanted to speak to you about your book, How to Tell If Someone Is Lying. And I know you've got quite a number of books out: The Unforgiven Spy, Cold Read Like a Spy, Questionable Tactics, all phenomenal books I'd like to get to, but I really focused in on that one that you released in 2022. And I understand you have a copy of it in front of you.
I
Love to
do,
see
yeah.
that. Yeah.
So there we
So,
go. That's the one.
yeah.
Um, I'm gonna give a little confession now with the how to tell if someone is lying because it's a little bit of a boring title, but it's actually based on a Google search, so it helped me to cheat the algorithms to get it at the top there.
Hey, marketing is part of it. I think that's
That's it.
brilliant. Yeah. And so you got quite a number of books, and this one eventually comes out. And I love the introduction. I read that it was for your daughter, and you thought it was just a good tool for people to have a good skill that the general public could use in their everyday lives. So was that the full motivation? Were there other aspects or other things that motivated you to write that book?
Well, there was a first edition to this, and it was okay, but as times change and kind of theories change and more things are learned through the science of it all,
Yeah.
I thought it's about time to give it a little bit of an update, and that was what it was to kind of give the reader a little bit more value, let them learn some really juicy stuff from it that they can then go out and actually apply in their own working world.
Yeah, and what makes your book different from other books that are on deception detection?
I think one of the biggest differences, what people may notice, is that there's no pictures in it.
Hmm.
And that's done very, very deliberately, because body language is very much a visual thing, and of course, a still image isn't isn't a good representation of somebody's actions or motions. So if you, for example, were to turn around, and I'm not sure how many of your listeners watch your videos here, but if you see the motion of somebody kind of folding their arms and looking down and fidgeting, it's a motion, it's not a pose. So I'll kind of describe that motion because a single picture is a single frame in time. And if people are looking for that still pose, then it's a bit like a word from a sentence instead of a full sentence. And you're not kind of learning the language and being able to process it properly. Does that make sense the way
Ah,
I've said
yeah,
that?
absolutely. Yeah, it's one that doesn't tell the full story, is what I think you're saying, right?
Exactly, yeah. So by reading the book, you learn to look for more than just a pose. You look for the whole kind of sentence that people are saying with their body, and on all the methods are in there in a way that kind of teaches people in a system that allows them to take it in and learn it and apply it, rather than kind of over confusing people with way too much science. I've kept it nice and easy to comprehend.
Yeah, a concept that you mentioned in the book is that it is always good to know a person's baseline emotions and understand how they act, or does it teach you just on the spot too as well, or do you
Um,
teach that spectrum?
so you can do it reasonably quickly. So and by the way, I've not been observing you from the start, but just basically just notice that your hands are open gestures, which is generally a sign of being open as a person.
Oh,
And occasionally you'll kind of clasp them in, which is a sign of confidence as you're talking. And you're nice and open with your posture, which is all showing a mixture of basically generally being open and trustworthy and genuinely interested in the conversation that's going on. Now, if I were talking to you and that changes all of a sudden, so I've established that as a baseline whilst you and I have been talking. If that were to change suddenly and you were to say move facing sideways and fold your arms, and all of a sudden everything changed a little bit, your blink rate went up and your breath rate changed and these kind of things, then I'd be like, okay, that's different. So I haven't known you for years and years and years, but just in a few seconds, I've been able to say, okay, I can see what he normally does and how he normally acts. So now if I look for something that's abnormal or something that's different, then it kind of can stand out a little bit, and it can have me asking the question why. It doesn't necessarily mean deception, but it just means something's different, and then I can investigate.
yeah, that's wild too. And so I know I do that in some conversations too, where I'll fold my hands and turn away. And it's probably good to be aware of that stuff that project negative messaging or just a change. I really look forward to completing the book, but just some of these points you bring up, it's amazing. So, just in your opinion, for those that haven't had an opportunity to read the book, what are some common signs that someone is lying?
Right. I'm going to dispel a couple of myths here because the last thing I want to do is give somebody what's been like kind of told in the trade as a Pinocchio effect. And if you're looking for one thing, like if somebody scratches their nose, that means they're lying. You're never going to get that. It doesn't work like that. Unfortunately, the downside of body language, and this is why it's not allowed to be used in a court of law. One
Mm,
thing for one person can mean something completely different for another person.
sure.
So, like we were saying about the folding of arms, you
Yeah.
get some people that's one of the biggest myths. Say, oh, he folded his arms, so he's being defensive. There's loads of reasons why people could fold their arms. It might be cold. They might be
Yeah.
comfortable doing it. There's lots of different reasons that people want to do it. Maybe they are a doorman and that's the usual pose that they adopt. It's one of those things that happens that kind of, if you're looking for one single thing, you're always going to get it wrong. What you should
Okay.
be looking for, quite simply, is clusters.
Mm.
That's what you're looking for.
Can
So
you?
yeah, I mean, I'll go into depth a little bit for you with
Yeah.
it. So instead of like looking for just, so this is where I can be used in a court of law where most body language experts can't, because I do something called CCA, which is combined communication analysis. So this is looking at everything from your speech pattern, your speech pitch, your speed of speech, your blink rate, all of these different things, as well as your body language, as well as the psychology behind your lie, and even statement analysis. So for example, if I give somebody a question and I turn around and say to them, right, did you take this man's wallet? And they fold their arms, their blink rate goes up, and they go, I don't even know where he keeps his wallet. Then all of a sudden, I've got a lot going on that's different, because
Yeah.
if that's not how he's normally acting, I'm looking at the fact that he's folded his arms, his blink rate's gone up, he's moved his body away. So there's three things, there's three clusters. Those are three physical clusters. Then you
Yeah.
might have the fact that his speech rate has gone quiet and he's stuttered at the beginning. On top of all of that, the statement analysis says he didn't answer the question. That's the most important thing, because when you analyze that statement and I say, did you take this man's wallet? And he says, I don't even know where he keeps his wallet. That wasn't a no. That's the most important thing you're looking for.
Oh man.
You need to get that no. It doesn't matter what comes after. If he turns around and says, no, I didn't take his wallet, I don't even know where he keeps it, then that's fine. But if you don't get a no, that should be a major red flag.
Oh, that's
So,
crazy. Well, I guess let me ask you this: how reliable are body language cues, though, in identifying deception? It may be different with different people, and so is it that the clusters, just like you mentioned, just a group of different things that
yeah, so
kind of give you more certainty?
there are some which are more reliable than others. Like blink rate, for example, is something that is generally a rate of high stress. The more somebody's blink rate increases, that's generally the higher stress they are. So if you think of somebody reading a book, they will have a very low blink rate because they're in bed, maybe relaxed, reading, and it might be one or two a minute. But if you think of somebody who is like, I don't know, maybe going through a firefight, their blink rate will be really, really high.
Oh yeah.
Or completely the opposite. The adrenaline will be fueling them so much that their eyes are fixed open because of adrenaline fuel. So it depending on how they handle that kind of stress. So generally for stressed people, their blink rate will increase. And the way I do it is I will watch how many times they blink over 6 seconds, multiply that by 10, and that gives me their blink rate per minute. So you
Oh
don't have
wow.
to stare at anybody for
Yeah, yeah,
ages.
yeah,
Just
for like
and
no.
if you're in a room of people, you can just take the averages by looking at like kind of two or three different people and getting the average of maybe one on the left, right, and center of the front row to
Yeah.
work out what the average blink rate in the room is.
Yeah,
So, but
I think
blink
this is
rate's definitely
I agree with you. I think this is a fantastic skill for people to learn. And you bring up another point in the book about being able to read someone's body language. It's like learning a new language, and certain actions, like you said, means different things to different people. But in your opinion, the common person who isn't trained like you, how long does it take to learn these skills? You gotta certainly practice it a little bit, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's if you want to get to expert level, then it's going to take many many years of practice and
Right.
understanding that. And this is the hard part that people kind of struggle with a little bit. When we talked about baseline and how
Yeah.
you can baseline what's normal for somebody, understanding that baseline is environmental and will change, and not a lot of body language experts cover this, but if you understand your behavior with me now is what will be normal during the recording of a podcast, it'd be completely different if you were at a funeral. That'd be a completely different baseline again if you were
Yeah.
at a bar with the lads. So your baseline would be different if you were in Vegas, and your baseline would be different if you were in court of law.
That's
So
a
your
good point.
baseline, yeah, it's all going to change. So you have to understand that it's not just about spotting whether something's normal or abnormal for somebody from their baseline and establishing what their baseline is. It's establishing what their baseline is at that moment in that environment.
That's a good point because somebody has a different personality at work
Mm-hmm.
versus outside of work. And yeah, you're right. And I see people all the time. They just have, like, you see them outside of work. You're like, who is this person, right? And
Exactly.
yeah,
So
so
yeah, the
that's a
the way
great
you
point.
might behave around your parents might be completely different to how you hang around with your work buddies and the kind of behavior that you have. So yeah, once you establish what the baseline is dependent upon the environment, that's when you can then look for the cues that are dependent upon what's happening in that person's life at the time.
Yeah,
And mistakes happen.
yeah, no, 100%. And you mentioned in the beginning too, or at least I read in the beginning that it was your desire to teach the skills to your daughter. How's that working out? Has that been have you been
Yeah,
successful?
it's getting there, but I have to be a little bit careful because
Right.
she's a little bit too smart for
Right.
her own good.
That's right. That's
Because
right.
when you can normally lie to the average 8 or 9 year old and say yes,
That's
you've got to
right.
go to bed early, otherwise Santa wouldn't come. She's at the age, she's 12 years old now, where she kind of folds her arms, looks at me, and says, "Yeah, come on, Dad, feed me another one."
Ah, all right. Should have waited a little late. No, I think that's great. There's people that are just very good at lying, and so do skilled liars show a different deception pattern than the average person, in your opinion?
They can do, and here's the big thing that is going to make the massive difference. If I were to ask you now, hey, did you go to the moon yesterday? You'd probably look at me, and whether if you lied and said yes, I went to the moon yesterday, you wouldn't show any of the stress signals that normally will be shown by somebody that's lying. And the reason you wouldn't is because there's no stakes. It doesn't matter. There's no ramifications for your answer.
Right.
So yeah, and so because the stakes are so low, it's not going to have the same stress on you as if you were sitting in a police cell where, if you were looking at, a life imprisonment sentence and I said to you, hey, did you kill your next door neighbor for like
Yeah.
kind of, kicking your dog or whatever?
The
You know,
consequence.
yeah, the consequences are a lot higher. And therefore, the stress that you are going to be feeling is also going to be a lot higher. And therefore, it's going to be harder for you to control any of the stress responses that the body gives.
Yeah, no, it's all interesting. Environment, baselines, and just the consequence. I mean, you kind of know this, but to hear it packaged up, it's like, yeah, holy
Mm.
cow. And I think you're right. Again, a great skill for somebody to
Oh,
know. And so, do any examples of you, funny stories where you or maybe someone that you taught successfully spotted a lie using the
yeah.
techniques from your book? Any good examples you mind sharing for the show?
I can share you an example, and it's actually I'm going to go the opposite way. Instead of going down the road of bragging and going like, look how
Right,
good I
right.
am. Found this liar out. I'm actually going to go the opposite way, and I'm going to give an occasion where I've got it wrong. And the reason I'm going to do that is just to show people the types of things that even as an expert you can do if you've got a bias, because it's really really important that when I do this, if somebody gives me, say, CCTV footage or whatever the case may be, and I'm studying it, I try my best to know nothing at all about the history. I don't want to know about the headline in the newspaper or anything like that. I want to approach it and look at it and see what I see with no preconceived notions of what I think might have already happened.
Yeah.
And I do this for a few different individuals and agencies where they'll send me something, and it's great because they know I don't watch the news. They know I really don't care about what's going on in the world. So when they kind of send me something, that they know that I won't have seen the headlines and I can look at it completely objectively. So on one occasion, I got sent this footage. Or there was I've got to be very, very careful because I don't want to give any sensitive information away. But there
Yeah,
was
of
somebody
course.
that was there was a few potential suspects in a fraud case, and we narrowed a short list down. And there was one particular female, and she seemed okay at first glance when they went through the preliminary interviews, and there was nothing, there was no red flags. But when they went back for the second interview to find out more information, she all of a sudden was starting to do this a lot. And she was
Oh,
rubbing underneath her nose every time she was talking. And I thought, she wasn't doing that before. Maybe the pressure wasn't there before. Maybe the first interview, because it was just a kind of very basic, where were you and what was going on? This is a bit more in depth. Maybe she's starting to feel the stress. And I convinced myself that she was being deceptive. And because I convinced myself, I was starting to look for other little things. I was like, oh yeah, she did this. That must mean she's been deceptive too.
right.
And so I made myself believe, and I created a bias that she was guilty. So I contacted the people involved, and I said, right, I want to get her in for a third interview. I said, because this first one, I said she wasn't doing this particular action. I said the second one, she's doing it loads. I said it, might be down to nerves, and I want to know for sure. And what happened was the first one was done in around about, I think it was about November,
Okay.
and the second one was done just before Easter, and they brought her in. And when I got in, it was almost summertime, almost midsummer time, and I went down there, and I remember opening the door of the interview room, and she sat there. And I said, hello, come to have a chat with you. And she went, hello, I'm really sorry. I've got really bad hay fever. And I went, ah,
Ah,
that's where I've gone wrong. She's got this
yeah,
big, bright red nose, and it dawned on me it wasn't a deceptive cue. It wasn't a body language or a stress signal. It was simply hay fever.
yeah.
But because I couldn't see that in the videos and I didn't know what was going on at the time, and I hadn't put that together. And this goes back again to like what I was saying to you about environmental baseline. It
Yeah,
can
that's
even
right.
change, even changes with the time of year. So that made a massive impact. And I bring that up deliberately for anybody who is like kind of learning body language. The importance of knowing that something can change over time, over the time of year, over environment and everything else is almost as important as learning the body language cues themselves.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Yeah, not to overread certain body actions sometimes, because
Yeah.
I'll associate something with just lying or something's weird with another person, and then you have no idea. Maybe something's going on in their life that is causing those stressors, not necessarily the conversation that they're having with the person. And so, yeah,
Exactly.
no, that's great. What about culture though? So I know environment, but what about culture in certain countries? I know they hate conflict or just off conversations, and so the tendency is that they'll say yes when they're in public, and then it's a different case when you're private. But do you think cultural background has an influence on
Oh, massively.
lying
Yeah.
behaviors?
Yeah. From country to country, things can change. And
Yeah,
I mean, just understanding like the differences between kind of Western society and so, for example,
yeah,
here in England, a lot of people tend to say please and thank you for everything. It's just something that's kind of drummed into us. If somebody can do the slightest little favor, oh, thank you very much. And so, and therefore, when we go abroad and we go on holiday or vacation to some nice resorts where there's a mixture of cultures, the British tend to think of the Russians as very, very rude. And the thing is, it's not that they're rude, it's just that they don't waste time on unnecessary words.
okay,
So, whereas a British person will go to the bar and turn around and say something like, could I have a pint of your finest lager, please, sir? The Russians will walk up and go, vodka. And, yeah, and that's it. That's as much as they need to say. So
all
they won't
right,
say anything, you know.
point
And after
taken.
we're served, and we'll go, thank you very much, and the Russians will pick it up, drink it, and walk away. So we'll see them as rude, or the British generally will see like Muscovites as being very rude. But it's not that they're rude; it's just culturally
Yeah,
unnecessary to say please or thank you for things that if you're paying for a service or whatever the case may be,
yeah,
it's not the done thing.
point.
Same as kind of, I mean, you guys over there, you tip with almost everything, every cab ride, every
Yeah,
meal, every drink. It's part of the culture in America.
right.
And again over here, I mean, we don't do that so much. It's very rare that we tip over in the UK, so it's a very alien thing to. So even little things like that, if you understand the cultural differences country to country,
Yeah,
can affect body language and how it's perceived because there are things in certain countries that are considered rude, like in China, showing your feet
yeah,
is very
crossing your
rude.
legs.
That's it, yeah. So there's lots of things that that are just not the done thing, and you can even tell from people's walk sometimes what part of the
Oh,
world.
interesting.
Yeah.
How so?
Well, if you know if you see a typical person from China walk, they will generally have what I call the locked feet kind of walk,
Hmm.
where if you can imagine like either a short piece of rope or a chain with ankle cuffs, and it's very small steps,
Oh,
like
sure.
they're wearing a lock around their ankles. And what you can do is you can tell generally from um, whether somebody's from the city or the country by the speed that they walk. People from the country will walk around about 15% slower than
Yeah.
people from the city. And
Oh,
the more
sure.
that city doubles in size, the more the pace of the walk will increase.
Interesting. Yeah, body language is so fascinating. Just from a body language expert, are there certain actions that you don't recommend for people to do? What are some in general? I've heard some where, like, when you're talking, you never want to put your head down to your shoulders and look away. Are there some that, hey, in general life, are there some practices that you recommend people not doing?
Um, so yeah, and it depends on what you want to achieve, really. I mean, it's if you want to intimidate somebody or you want to kind of show somebody that you're not intimidated, then generally standing on to them face to face is enough to kind of make most people feel like they need to. When men talk, they won't talk facing opposite each other. They kind of go into a V shape. And
Oh,
you'll notice if you stand on front onto somebody, they'll then move off, and then if you stand on in front of them again, they'll move off,
oh,
and because it's seen as very intimidating.
oh,
So, and the exception of that is if you are the other side of, say, a bar or a desk or a reception desk or something like that, and somebody's face to face with you, then that can act as an exception because there is that physical barrier in front of you. So what you want to do in those instances, and this isn't really meant to be a lesson in intimidation, but if you do want to kind of get somebody to kind of feel concern, then look just above their eyebrows when you're talking to them.
Oh,
And that will it sends signals in their brain that starts making them go haywire. They start questioning, have I got dandruff? Have I got what's going on? Why do you keep looking up there? Is my hair a mess?
right.
And what it is, it's distracting them from whatever it is they're doing, or whatever it is they're thinking. Another one I'll give to your kind of customer service facing people. If there's somebody in there ranting and raving, screaming, demanding a refund after you've told them they can't or whatever else, if they're really going absolutely kind of crazy, then just look at them with a nice little smile and just say, you have a little something in your teeth there. And you watch them all of a sudden, if they'll go from this rant to, I just want to and everything changes.
Throw them off.
Yeah, it throws them right off. If you want to avoid that altogether, the best thing you can do, and this is why bars have mirrors behind them, have a mirror behind your reception desk. Because nobody wants to see themselves acting as an a-hole.
Oh, that is crazy. That's a good
Yeah.
one. I'm gonna have to put a big mirror above.
Yeah,
Yeah.
if you've got an office where you get a lot of complaints, stick a nice big mirror behind your
That's
desk.
right.
People want to see themselves in the best light. So,
That's a great point. Hey, another one I've heard too, which I think works too, is when I'm in a conference or something, and they said, or I guess any scene in general, hey, you want to figure out if someone's looking at you. The mirror technique is what they call it, I believe.
mhm.
Where you scratch your nose or you check the time, and there's something about just checking the
Checking the
time on your
time.
watch
Yeah.
that I heard that cues somebody to do the same thing too. Do you
Yeah.
find any truth in that too as well?
Yep. So there's two major ones, and this goes back from working in intelligence. That was one of the two that we were taught. If you want to know if somebody's sitting in the restaurant watching you, number one is to check your watch, and more importantly, if you can check your watch and go, yeah, with a bit of a shock of going,
Oh
oh,
my god!
yeah. Because what happens is you're almost looking at your watch going, how are is that the time? And what's going to happen is that's going to cue the other person to go, what time is it? Because in their head, it raises the question, did I miss something? How long have I been here? So that's one. And then the second one is simply to yawn. Yawns are so contagious, it's untrue. And you get the mirror neurons that makes that other person want to yawn. So if you're in a restaurant, you feel you're under surveillance and somebody's in there and you want to know if they're watching you, all you do is just make a big, yet loud, obnoxious yawn and then just wait or turn around and see who else yawns in the room. And if they do it as well, then, they've been watching you for some time.
That's a good. They make sure that I'm on my phone too much. I think they're looking at me. So, hey, well, what are your thoughts or your opinions on direction of the feet on where they're pointing? Is that a cue of
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
you can use to tell what is the general practice or what do they say about feet pointing?
So if you're in conversation with somebody and and their feet are just kind of in what I call a traditional V shape, we're just like a relaxed standing, kind of stance, if you want to call it that, that's really nothing to worry about. But if somebody's talking to you and their feet are facing one way and their body's facing the other, and then that's a cue that they want to leave. They're because their feet are trying to walk away, but their body's trying to be polite and kind of. They almost look like they're trying to pivot on the spot, like they're almost walking away but turning back to talk to you, and that's an indication that they need to get out of there. So if ever you're having a chat with somebody and their feet are kind of facing away, but their body is still facing you, just gives the old kind of look. I can tell you got a lot going on. Nice to see you again. Let's catch up sometime and let them go.
Yeah, it's good to be aware of these cues, and I'm really enjoying talking about
Yeah.
these things. I mean, I know you created the book for the common person who doesn't practice this, work. But any other examples where these methods can be used, in your opinion? Like, who did you tailor the book for?
So I've got it for pretty much anybody who has an interest. I mean, don't get me wrong, a lot of my experience has come from working in the world of either intelligence,
Yeah.
security, or law enforcement environments. But they are applicable to almost any scenario, whether it's a
Yeah.
cheating partner or whether it's your children. And I mean, I mentioned in the book there, one of my favorites is what I call a guilt revealing question. And my friend, he uses this on his kids all the time. He's got two kids, a vase gets broke in the house, and and he's like kind of puts the two kids in two separate rooms, and he says, "Who broke the vase? I don't know." And he goes, "Okay." So he uses this guilt revealing question, and he says, "What do you think should happen to the person who broke the vase?"
Oh.
And the one kid turned around and go, "I don't know, no more ball in the house, I guess."
Yeah.
And he, okay. And he asked the question to the other one. He said, "What do you think should happen to the person that broke the vase?" And the other one was like, "No Xbox, take away their pocket money, no ice cream, no,
Yeah.
ground them for a month." And it's like, yeah, now I know which one did
Yeah, exactly. It's not
it.
you.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good one too.
And that works in reverse with like, I've seen very similar instances with and again, I'm taking the time here to choose my words carefully, so I don't want to end up incriminating or saying anything about a
Yeah.
particular individual. But there was one gentleman who'd been accused of some pretty heinous crimes, and they were pretty explicit as to what he'd done physically to other people. And when he was interviewed, the same guilt revealing question was asked, and it was quite simply a case of, what do you think should happen to the person that did this to all of those children? And he said, I'm guessing therapy.
Oh,
I thought, yeah, got you. Because
yeah.
anybody else would have turned around and said, hang
Death.
him,
Yeah.
kill him, yeah, slice him to pieces, whatever. So that straight away was a great big kind of, oh, yeah, we got you. We
Okay.
know it was you.
Yeah.
So those guilt revealing questions, and it's a natural, innate kind of thing, because what we're doing, we're asking the person to sentence themselves. If
Sure.
they've done it, we're asking them to be their own judge, jury, and executioner.
Yeah.
And of course,
That's a good
you're
one.
saying to them, what you're technically saying, what do you think should happen to you? So when they're trying to figure out what they think their own penance should be,
Yeah.
they're not going to want it to be too heavy.
Yeah. It's softer for some reason, right? For obvious reasons.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, that's a great one. You mentioned in the book too, hey, it's always great to just practice this a little bit each day, if you want to get better at it. Work is probably a good place to do it since you're there most of the day and time out of the week. What about while you're watching TV? Maybe focus more on the news or like what would you call for scenarios to practice it when you're watching TV?
Yeah, I mean that'd be perfect. I do say to people, if you're going to watch TV, if you want to learn body language, then the best way to do it is to just turn the volume off, just put it on mute, and watch what's happening more so than kind of listening to the words, because you can tell. And remember, actors are there for a reason. They are there to overemphasize what we're seeing visually. So they're going to be showing angst, or they're going to be showing anger, or they're going to be showing sadness in the best physical way that they can. So it is going to be slightly amplified if
Yeah.
you're watching a drama or that kind of thing. But you
Right.
should, by rights, be able to stick a kind of any TV drama on, or any movie or whatever, and by watching the body language in the room, you should be able to have a rough idea of what's happening. You can tell when two people are going to kiss. You can
Yeah.
tell when two people are facing up to each other and about to fight. You can so you can see these things. So we're all pretty good. We know when I say these things, we know what we're looking for. We just don't know exactly how to label it.
Yeah.
And once you get used to watching it on dramas and films where they are overemphasizing it because that's what they're paid to do as actors, then start watching it on things like news footage or CCTV, or
Yeah.
captures where there has been incidents, and look for things. And you should be able to, and this is the big one here now, you should be able to predict it. And if you can predict it with accuracy, that's when you're getting really good. So
Yeah.
if you can turn around and say, right, I've watched the footage so far, and I can see that guy over there on the right is going to come over and attack this guy here on the left. And if that's what happens, then you're getting really good. If something completely different happens, I mean, don't get me wrong, like, the ceiling collapses, then that's something. Then there's nothing to worry about. You can't foresee that, but if it's something that you start getting good at and reading the body language between like rivals and that kind of thing, it doesn't take you long to be able to then walk the streets and see the kind of people who might be the opposite side of the street but know each other.
Yeah.
You might have certain crimes going on in the area, and it doesn't take you long to go, him over there sitting by that call box. I know he's waiting to give an instruction to him over here sitting in this Mustang, or whatever the case may be. And you just
Sure.
pick up on these things. So yeah, this is something you can do by watching telly. Watch the drama to start with until you get
Yeah.
good at picking cues. Then watch the CCTV or incident footage or real time footage or YouTube footage, anything you can find, and then and then work it out from there for practice.
Yeah, your book has certainly enlightened me to do those things in everyday life now. So I think it's great. I'm going to definitely share it with some of my colleagues. And two questions I did want to ask you too. One was, at work we're often asked to brief, and so what are some good practices for people briefing in terms of projecting confidence, or just some things you shouldn't do while you're briefing, in your opinion?
So confidence wise, confidence wise, you can pretty much do what you've been doing with when you got your hands in front of you like that, what they call steepling. You see what like Monty Burns does in The Simpsons. He's very, but if you do the fingers like this, that's generally a sign of kind of the evil rich guy. They kind of, when you're doing that. Like a Bond villain. So just keep them steepled and kind of, have them in front of you. And that's generally a sign of confidence. But the most important thing is to slow your bodily actions down. So if you think of the kind of animals that are out there in the world, the kind of animals that are prey are the ones that look around, little short movements like this. Yeah. And if you think of the kind of animals that are predators, you think of the slow moving tiger padding the
Oh
paws
man,
as yeah, and that's when you've got a totally different air of confidence about you.
yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah,
yeah, that's crazy.
that's how you want to be going into. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying like kind of slank into the meeting room like you're about to kind of dive on somebody.
Right,
Yeah,
devour everybody.
but
Yeah,
slow everything down enough to kind of to show. Look, I'm happy. I'm comfortable. I'm confident. I don't need to be looking around me like I'm about to be attacked. And
yeah,
and that is going to really help a lot of people out now.
yeah.
And
It's
and not being shy.
No, yeah, that's right. And another great one too that I've learned too is not using the podium as protection. So I like to
Yeah.
step away from the podium to leave myself open as well. So yeah, just really interesting things that sometimes we don't think about. The other big question I was dying to ask you about is I need you as a body language expert to tell me, can you or can you not defeat the polygraph? Is that what's the myth and what's the truth?
Okay, I'm going to tell a lot of people what they probably don't realize here. It's not the polygraph you've got to beat, it's the man operating the polygraph machine you have to
Yeah,
beat.
I'm
So,
reading it now.
yeah. So, what you've got here is a polygraph machine is literally a prop, it's just a tool. And it really doesn't matter so much what the polygraph machine says helps. It does make a difference, but it's not the be all and end all. What you've got to do is you've got to look at the person operating the machine because they're monitoring you way before it starts and way after it
Oh, good
finishes.
point. The
Okay.
baseline.
Yeah. So what's going to happen is, even if you can imagine at the end, I'm going to go in reverse, but if you can imagine at the end of it, you're taking the straps off, you're taking the bits and pieces off, and you go, right? The guy's going to go, okay, that was a big relief for him. And the other thing is, he may give you like a post examination interview where it feels and appears to be completely casual. Right.
Ah,
So he may turn around and you think now that this is off the record, you think that the whole thing's over.
it's
So you
not.
might turn around and say, yeah. So he might say, how was that for you? Are you okay? You're like, yeah, I was really nervous at that one point, especially question 23. Yeah. So, and of course, so you've got to be aware of the fact that he's still watching everything you do. and he's going to continue watching you. So even when he says, right, it's going to take about 20 to 40 minutes for me to go through the results, you go out into the lobby and wait, and we'll be with you in a minute. Or whatever the case may be, even if he says, right, just go out while I just check the calibrations on the machine, or whatever the hell it might, you can make up absolutely anything. And he's going to be watching you, whether it's on CCTV or through a window or a mirror or whatever else. And he's going to be seeing whether you're pacing the floor and nervous, whether you're biting, or whether you're sitting down and relaxed, thinking, okay, you just got to wait for the results now, and I should be all good. And these are all things that are going to give away to him cues as to how nervous you're feeling, and whether you believe you've been caught in a lie, or whether you believe that you've got nothing to worry about. So those are some of the things that you can do at the end of the test. The other thing is they are known to be quite unscrupulous sometimes, and they will turn around and they'll put some like sterile anti-bac wet wipes in the room, and they'll say, now please don't use these before the test, because if you wipe away the residue from your fingers and we put the the sensors on your fingers, it could completely mess up the reading and that kind of thing. And so those are for after the test. And you go, okay, and they say, right, before I hook you up, I'm just going to go and do some paperwork. I'll be about 5 minutes, and he'll be watching to see if you're using the wipes to wipe your fingers before you start. Loads of things like this. I have a friend who can tell you she was a Marine certified interrogator. She worked in Guantanamo Bay post 9/11, and she interviewed detainees. And basically, she got more information from them walking them to or from the interview room than she did in the interview room.
Yeah,
So,
I can see that because they're on extra guard when they're actually getting interviewed.
yeah,
So
as soon as
that's
you
a
hit the
great point.
record button, or you're in the official mode, and it's now an official statement, their guard is up. But on the walk to the interview room, totally different thing. It's all relaxed. It's casual conversation.
No, that's great. Those were some of the questions I was dying to ask you. Hey, in your opinion, are there some red flags that people often overlook when assessing deception? And
Yeah, and to be fair, I know this is primarily about body language, but I don't think statement analysis gets anywhere near as much attention as what it really should. And I mean, this is something that I've studied under the creator,
yeah,
and I've done a lot of statement analysis, and there are so many things that we can learn from the way people speak and the order of preference. So hypothetically, if you get introduced by your wife, and she, say you got the whole family there, or or your wife is asked, who do you live with? And she turns around and says, oh, my 4 kids, the 2 dogs, the hamster. Oh, we got a bat in the attic, and my husband. Then you're pretty low down the totem pole, But if she turns around and say, oh, me and my husband live with our kids, then she sees you as equal, and because she said me and my husband and our kids, rather than me and my kids live with our husband. So listen to the order that people come in, because generally people will say the people that they kind of prioritize in the
sure.
order that that they come first. So hopefully that makes sense. So
Yeah, it absolutely does. Holy
if,
cow.
if the dog gets mentioned before you, it's time to reevaluate things.
It's probably not good. Oh, that's great. Yeah, fascinating conversation. I really appreciate your time. Hey, I wanted to give you an opportunity to speak about some of the projects that you have, or what you're working on, or anything that you want to promote. I'd love to
Sure.
share that.
Well, I've got my fiction series which has come out, which is the starting one is The Unforgiven Spy, which is all written from first-hand experience, and this is I've actually deliberately crammed it full of tradecraft from the spy world. So there's so many lessons in there. It's untrue, and I did it deliberately, hoping to get it banned, but it didn't work. But I tried. I figured it'd go straight to number 1 if it got banned. So I had another go in number 2. So number 2 is out, which is called the Burning Spy. The audio book has just come out for that too, and I'm currently working on a part 3 in the series, and that's going to be an ongoing series. So if anybody's really interested in the world of intelligence and wants to know the reality of spies and spying and that kind of thing, there's tons and tons of kind of revelations in there. So that's that. I've got as we said, the How to Tell If Someone's Lying book, which is like more the non-fiction stuff. And I'm also working on a massive event which I'm hoping to get done probably by the end of summer this year.
Okay.
And that is taking all the psychological spy training that is given to intelligence officers from the world's best intelligence agencies. So we're talking MI6, CIA, Mossad. We're going to get all the kind of
Oh,
psychology lessons. We're going to cram it into a condensed event where we're going. So it's not going to be like your the shooting and bombs and driving stuff. It's going to be the kind of the thinking methods and how to think strategically so
yeah,
that you
sure.
can change your life and use it to your advantage in absolutely everything you do.
Wow, that sounds like a lot of good things coming in 2025.
Oh, definitely.
And then again on the side, you still do the YouTube stuff, and you know what
Yeah.
I appreciate about you too is that hey, you got this info that you want to share, you want to write about, but I feel like you really understand the marketing side of it too as well, and having to showcase and broadcast yourself. You want to talk about just when you realized that it was important to promote your stuff too as well?
Yeah, I mean, it was something that I love. It's with the history I've got and the career I've had. Loads of people say, "Oh, but you can't tell anybody anything, can you?" And I'm like, "Yeah, actually, I can. As long as I'm not specific with, as long as I don't turn around and say there was this guy called Dmitry who was a Russian diplomat that we moved to. As long as don't start kind of giving specifics, and then all of a sudden the secrets got out, then you can pretty much say, within reason." Experiences you've been through, or
Sure.
some of the training you've had and that kind of thing. And with that in mind, people were generally pretty shocked at how you can be open within reason as long as you're careful with what you're saying. It's not going to
Mhm.
affect anybody. There's nobody in danger. It's not going to affect ongoing operations and that kind of thing. So I thought, you know what, it'd be good to share this with a lot of people, get a lot of my old colleagues on from different agencies and kind of, tell about some of the stories from the field. The military get their kind of Veterans Day and their, the kind of parades that they get. People from the intelligence community, they don't get that. We don't really get much in the way of recognition at all. And I actually spent a lot of my career as a contractor, which is even worse because the intelligence just about get a recognition. The contractors they don't really get anything at all. They don't even get a black star if they die. So there's nothing. So at the end of the day, I thought, well, it'd be nice to get in front of a few people and kind of show what really happens and really goes on in the world of spying, and also show them that there are a lot of fallacies out there, mainly by Hollywood and movies.
Sure.
It's not quite what everybody thinks it is. You don't invade countries on your own.
And really fascinating. And I mentioned too was my podcast was generally focused on music, and this year I decided to just kind of do topics I was really interested in. So I really appreciate you being my wild card, as you mentioned. You occasionally having these topics on your show, and so I usually like to close the interview out with just some fun, lighthearted questions. So if you're ready, I'll kick them off.
Far away.
All right, let's see. Hey, what I mean, just you being a author, family man, and all the amazing things that you do. What's your favorite way to unwind after a hectic day?
It used to be tequila, but I actually stopped drinking about 3 years ago.
Oh, great. Good for you.
Yeah, so I'm 3 years not touching a drop now. I suppose now it's just family time.
Yeah.
I'm getting to the age where I just really value that now. My daughter's 12, and I know it sounds crazy, but it just feels like I haven't got long before she's turning into an adult, and I want to enjoy
Yeah.
every minute of that I can.
Fantastic. As an ode to my music theme, I would love to hear from you your top three favorite musicians or bands of all time. Music.
Oh, this is gonna be a little bit wild now. This is. So I remember looking when I was probably about 15, 16, something like that. I remember looking at my CD collection, that's how old I am, and questioning my sexuality. And I'm like, okay, no, it can't be. I'm hoping it's just them and not me. Because one of my one of my favorite bands was actually Queen.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I was
Oh
like, yeah.
yeah.
So there was like, I don't know, there was just something about Freddie Mercury that just appealed to pretty much every age group.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was a
100%.
massive Queen fan. Um, I went through a fad of Rod Stewart as well for a
Yeah.
while,
Oh
and
man,
yeah,
classic.
that's pretty, yeah. So those are the old ones, but at the same time, and maybe this is because I have a 12-year-old daughter. I am not a Swiftie, but I'm starting to get into the kind of, the modern kind of pop music and that kind of thing that she has on. And I think it's mainly because of the fact that she's got it blasting all the time. But she's a massive, believe it or not, she's a massive Michael Jackson fan.
Hey, I love it. I
So,
love it.
so
Yeah.
I'm reliving Billie Jean every day in my house.
Oh, that's funny. Hey, what's your opinion about? I know that our countries have a problem when we define the word football, and so today is actually our biggest biggest game for football. But what are your thoughts on American football?
Okay, so I'm not really like a soccer fan anyway, so it really
Okay.
doesn't matter to me. But American football, it's brilliant as in the atmosphere and everything else, and I love what you guys do. What we call football, or you guys call soccer. I think that's kind of overrated here in the UK, and I'm gonna get like attacked for saying this by anybody in England. And like, we love our football.
Uh,
But it's never really been a thing for me. But I tell you what, why not really, really rock the boat here and upset everybody on both sides? And when we turn around and I give everybody the fact that the game baseball was invented by the English.
I didn't know
Ooh,
that.
yeah, that's going to
I'm gonna have
upset a
to
few.
check that. I'm gonna have to check that one. No way. Okay.
Yeah, I think it was about 1775. I think it was, but don't quote me on the year.
Oh, I'll certainly circle back with you and let you know what I find out. Interesting. I didn't know that. All right, man. Hey, what is a former spy's favorite food? Uh,
Oh, steak. Gotta be steak.
ooh, you're
Yeah.
you're not a well done guy, though, are you?
No, 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 no. I want it to be able to be resuscitated if I can get away with it. I want nothing else with it. A big steak and eggs, and that's about it.
Nice.
Fried in butter. Eggs and that's me. I'm good. None of this. Have you seen these salads that doctors insist that people have all the time? And I'm very cautious when it comes to salads because I know that many people they come to me and they say the doctor says I've got to start eating more fruit, veg, and salad, and then a few months later they're dead. So I'm not going to risk taking that salad and risking death by enjoying any of that leafy stuff. I'll just stick to my steak and eggs. Thank you.
Hey, nothing wrong with that. My two final questions for you. One is finish the sentence. I hate it when.
This is when cheesecake doesn't make you thinner.
Right. I concur.
Yeah.
All right, that
Yeah.
was a good one. And my final question for you: if you could have dinner with anybody, past or present, dead or alive, who would it be?
Who would it be? Big opportunity here now. I think I think I'm gonna go with Nikola Tesla.
Oh, hey, that is not. I hear that quite often. That's awesome. So
Yeah,
for many
that's
reasons.
definitely he was quite a tall fella at when he got his boots on. He was around about 7 foot and got the world's longest fingers and a bit of an unusual fella. But yeah, what a guy with a brain. If there was anybody who would want to ask questions,
Yeah,
he'd definitely be the man.
fantastic. Well, hey, Gavin, thank you again. I just appreciate your time and your expertise, and I look forward to sharing all this info and just the stories of all your accomplishments. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And I want to turn the floor over to you to close this thing out. Any final words before we close this interview out?
Well, thank you to everybody for watching, and I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you've learned lots. I encourage everybody to go out there and learn more about people, because we all have to live with each other, whether it's a digital age or a working age where we're in an office together. And the more you know and the more you understand about people, the better chance you've got of being successful in life. So if anybody wants to know more, I'm on all the social media sites.
Yeah,
Please feel free to get in touch with me, whether it's LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, whatever. I'm on the lot. And I've enjoyed every minute I've been here. It's been a fun conversation. I hope to do it again one day.
absolutely. We shall definitely do that. Gavin Stone, thank you so much. And I look forward to sharing this.